You won't believe what just happened. After years of silence, gospel sensation Leandria Johnson, now 42, is finally speaking out. The struggles, the heartbreak, the controversy, she's revealing it all. And what she says could change everything you thought you knew about her. Tonight, we dive deep into the story she could no longer keep quiet. For years, Leandria Johnson's name has been synonymous with unmatched gospel talent, soaring vocals, and awards that many could only dream of. But behind the stage lights, the microphones, and the roaring applause, there has been a side of her life few have ever seen. A side filled with struggles, doubts, and decisions that left her silent until now. At 42, she has finally decided she can't stay silent any longer. In an exclusive revelation, Leandria opens up about the personal battles that shook her faith, the controversies that the media whispered about but never fully explored, and the moments in her life that could have ended everything she worked so hard to build. Tonight, we'll take you beyond the headlines, past the viral clips, and into the untold story of a woman who conquered fame but wrestled with her own truth. You won't believe the challenges she faced, the shocking revelations she shares, and the raw honesty that makes this story impossible to ignore. This is where it gets unbelievable. From near-career collapse to a fight to reclaim her voice, we're going to uncover the moments that define Leandria Johnson today. By the end of this story, you'll see her not just as a gospel artist, but as a woman whose resilience and courage are finally on full display. And just when you think you know the whole story, the next chapter will shock you even more. But before we get there, you need to understand how it all began. Leandria Johnson's journey to gospel stardom is nothing short of extraordinary. Born with a voice that seemed touched by divine favor, she first caught the public's eye during her early performances in church and local competitions. But it wasn't just her voice. It was the passion, the soul, the raw emotion she poured into every note that made her stand out. People didn't just listen, they felt. Her big break came when she entered a nationally televised gospel competition. Week after week, she captivated audiences with performances that were nothing short of miraculous. The judges, the fans, and the gospel community began to recognize that here was someone different, someone whose talent couldn't be ignored. Her victory wasn't just about winning a competition, it was the start of a career that would inspire thousands. But behind the cheers and accolades, there were pressures that many didn't see. The industry that promised fame and recognition also demanded perfection, compliance, and sometimes silence. For Leandria, navigating fame was never easy. Early on, she faced scrutiny for the way she expressed herself, both on, stage, and off. Some critics questioned her authenticity, while others unfairly judged her personal choices. It was the beginning of a recurring pattern: public adoration on one side, harsh criticism on the other. And yet she persevered. She released albums, performed at major events, and won awards that solidified her place in gospel history. Every note she sang told a story of triumph, faith, and resilience. Fans loved her for her music, but few truly understood the weight she carried behind the scenes. But what happened next would challenge everything she had built. The fame, the awards, and the applause couldn't shield her from the storms waiting off stage. A personal crisis loomed, one that would push her to the brink and force her into silence for years. And just when it seemed like she had it all figured out, life threw her a curveball that would change her journey forever. But what exactly happened during those years of struggle? And why did it push her into silence? That's the story we uncover next. Behind every soaring note and every standing ovation, there was a side of Leandria Johnson that the public rarely saw. Fame, it turns out, is a double-edged sword. While the world celebrated her talent, the pressures of the spotlight and the harsh judgments of the public began to take a toll on her mental and emotional well-being. In her own words, there were times she felt invisible even in the midst of accolades. The industry, while applauding her skill, was quick to scrutinize her every move, her personal choices, her interactions, her very personality. Social media amplified the criticism, turning small missteps into viral controversies. And while fans cheered, haters whispered, sometimes loudly, questioning her character, her faith, and even her devotion to gospel music. One of the most shocking episodes came when rumors began circulating about her personal life. Though the details were murky and often exaggerated, the damage was real. Headlines questioned her morality, while fans wondered if the woman they admired was hiding a darker truth. Leandria, ever resilient, often chose silence over confrontation. But silence, as she now reveals, came at a cost. During these years, she battled personal demons that few knew about. Anxiety, depression, and moments of self-doubt threatened to derail not just her career, but her very sense of purpose. There were nights she cried alone, wondering if her voice, the very thing that brought her life's greatest victories, could carry her through the storm. She recalls questioning God, asking why a life dedicated to faith and music would be met with such relentless judgment. And then came the controversies that would define her in the eyes of the public. Critics seized on every misstep, while supporters tried to defend her. It was a time when her name became more associated with scandal than her gift. For someone whose life had been devoted to inspiring and uplifting. Others, it was a crushing reality. Friends and family offered advice, mentors offered guidance, but ultimately, the world watched as Leandria retreated from the spotlight, her voice muted not by choice, but by circumstance. But what's most surprising, and what few people realize, is that even in silence, she was preparing for a comeback. The struggles, the heartbreak, and the criticism weren't the end. They were part of a deeper story that she needed to tell. And the truth she's finally revealing now, it's nothing like anyone expected. In the next chapter, we uncover the turning point, the moment when Leandria decided enough was enough. When she realized that staying silent was no longer an option, and that sharing her story could redefine her legacy forever. After years of silence, isolation, and whispered rumors, something inside Leandria Johnson shifted. She realized that the world didn't need another version of her molded by critics, nor did she need to live under the weight of fear and judgment. At 42, she made a decision that would change everything. She could no longer stay silent. This wasn't a sudden choice. It was the result of countless nights spent reflecting, praying, and asking herself what her true purpose was. The struggles she endured, the heartbreak, the controversies, the public scrutiny, had all brought her to a crossroads. She understood that silence might protect her temporarily, but it also allowed misconceptions to fester and false narratives to dominate the conversation. Her voice, she realized, was too important to remain quiet. Her first public statement after years of silence shocked fans and critics alike. In interviews and social media posts, she opened up about her battles with mental health, personal mistakes, and the moments when she questioned everything about her career and faith. She didn't just apologize or defend herself, she shared her truth in a raw, unfiltered way. And in doing so, she reclaimed the narrative that had been shaped by others for too long. Leandria also addressed the controversies that had haunted her career. She confronted rumors head-on, clarifying what was real and what had been exaggerated. The honesty was startling, because it wasn't just about reputation management, it was about authenticity. Fans saw a side of her they had never seen before, vulnerable, reflective, and incredibly brave. But the comeback wasn't just about words, it was about action. She returned to the studio with renewed energy, pouring her pain and triumphs into music that was deeper, more honest, and more spiritually powerful than ever. Every note seemed to echo her journey, the highs and lows, the heartbreaks, and the victories. Critics who had doubted her talent were forced to acknowledge not just her skill, but her resilience. Yet, even as she regained her footing, the world was still watching closely. Could she fully escape the shadow of past controversies? Could her voice truly resonate again without being overshadowed by rumors? These questions loomed large, adding tension to her public reemergence. But Leandria's courage was undeniable, and each performance, each message, each heartfelt interview reaffirmed that this was her time to rise. And then, in what many are calling the most honest and emotional revelation of her career, she shared what had driven her silence for so long, the moments of fear, betrayal, and doubt that nearly silenced her forever. It was a confession that left fans stunned, critics speechless, and the gospel world buzzing. Because here was a woman who had faced public scrutiny, personal struggle, and near despair. And yet, she stood tall, determined to reclaim her story on her own terms. But just when it seemed like her comeback story had reached its peak, there was another shocking twist, a revelation about her personal life and her faith journey that even her closest fans had never expected. And this, she says, is the part of her story that she simply cannot stay silent about. After years in the shadows, Leandria Johnson is finally lifting the curtain on the moments no one else has seen. This is the chapter of her story where the rawest truths come to light, the confessions that explain not just her silence, but the resilience, faith, and courage that define who she is today. Leandria begins by recounting some of her most private struggles, the battles with depression and anxiety that gnawed at her even while the world watched her shine. She speaks openly about nights she questioned her purpose, doubted her talent, and even wondered if she was worthy of the love and recognition she had received. For someone whose voice had been celebrated as heavenly, these admissions were startling. Yet they revealed a humanity that fans had longed to see, the real person behind the spotlight. Then came the controversies that had shadowed her career for years. She addressed the rumors, the misunderstandings, and the moments when gossip threatened to overshadow her legacy. Some stories, she explains, were twisted versions of real events. Others were entirely fabricated. But instead of defending herself aggressively, she chose honesty and transparency. She laid bare the truth, showing how much the weight of public opinion had affected her mental state and her faith. Perhaps the most shocking revelation came when she shared how some of the people closest to her had turned their backs during her darkest moments. Trusted friends and industry insiders, she says, didn't always have her back when she needed them most. Betrayal, she explains, cuts deeper than criticism from strangers, and it was these moments of isolation that forced her into prolonged silence. But even in these confessions, there is a remarkable sense of hope. Leandria emphasizes that every struggle, every tear, every controversy has been part of a bigger plan. She speaks of how her faith, though tested, never left her, and how her music became a lifeline when words alone couldn't heal. Her honesty is raw, her emotions palpable, and her story resonates because it is deeply human, a journey through pain, misunderstanding, and ultimate redemption. And then, just when viewers think they've heard it all, she drops a revelation that is both surprising and empowering. Leandria shares the personal decision that changed her trajectory, a choice to forgive, to reclaim her narrative, and to step fully into her voice without fear of judgment. It is a moment of liberation, one that is both inspiring and transformative, and it leaves the audience with a profound understanding of why she can no longer stay silent. The impact of these revelations is already rippling across the gospel and entertainment communities. Fans, critics, and fellow artists are responding to her courage, some with tears, others with renewed admiration, and many with newfound respect for the strength it took to speak openly after so many years of silence. Yet the most important takeaway is not just the drama or the controversy, it's the lesson in resilience, authenticity, and faith. Leandria Johnson's story reminds us that even when the world misunderstands you, even when silence feels like the only option, speaking your truth can be the most powerful step toward healing, redemption, and reclaiming your life.